here today with Russell Hage, right? That's how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Russell A. Hage.
Okay. And usually we start with just background information, where you were born, what year, so everybody can get to know you.
I was born March 20th, 1919.
Okay.
And I was born in a little town, or not a town, I was out in the country near Ravenna. And my mother told me at one time that she thought I was born in the very same bedroom that she was born in. It was a farmhouse.
Oh, she used to live there as well?
Yeah, she was very young. She was only 17 years old when I was born. She got married after she was just 16 when she got married. And during that time, my father served in at World War I. He served at Fort Custer for about 7 months.
Okay.
And then what I remember of after that, all I remember about being in Muskegon. I grew up in East Muskegon.
Okay.
And we lived in 2 houses while I was growing up. And they were up the opposite, on a square block. One was in this corner and the other one was this corner of the same square block. And the last house is what I remember the most.
Okay.
I have 3 sisters, younger than I. And that's where I went to, from high school I went to, let's back up. It was right across the street from later it became the parsonage of Unity Reformed Church.
Okay.
And I married one of their daughters back in 1941.
Okay.
I came home on leave. I think that's in that thing I gave you. And so that's where I went in the Army from there, from that place.
Well, do you remember anything about the Depression when you were growing up?
That was all Depression time. It was all Depression time.
Was it hard on your family?
I already graduated from high school. I graduated in 1937.
Okay.
I was on the first baseball team that Muskegon High had. In fact, there's a picture up on the wall there.
Okay.
And I was catcher for that team, and when I didn't catch, I played left field.
Okay.
But I was the only senior that played that year. I think it was a brand new, just started baseball.
What did your parents do? What did your parents do?
What did my parents do? My father owned a jewelry store originally. He was a watch repairman.
Okay.
And he grew up on a farm. He moved to Muskegon. He worked for a hardware store when I was real young. He went to watchmaking school. And later he was sort of converted in 1927. And he started handling Bibles and books and stuff like that.
Okay.
And my mother worked for him. She didn't really work for anybody while she was during that time.
Okay.
Because I have my first sister was about 2.5 years younger than I, and then the other one was 5 years after that, and the other one was 5 years after that. One of them has passed away, and the other one has another one has cancer. The 2 youngest ones, the oldest one is still living. They live in Longview, Texas, and the other one lives in Newton, Kansas, and the one that died lived in Plano, Texas.
Okay. So you graduated in 1937.
37.
And then did you go to work after that?
I played ball.
You played baseball?
We didn't have jobs. We didn't have jobs. Well, I went to my dad's store and worked there, swept the floor, washed the windows, and dusted and stuff like that. And he taught me a little bit about watchmaking, and I did learn to repair clocks and things like that while I was there. And then when I played ball, we played playground ball. See, there we didn't have all the things that people have now. And all we do is work around Angel School, which is on Apple Street in Muskegon. And I was there when they built the new school. Our 6th grade is where I met my wife. We met in a church, corner of Apple and Wood Street. I gotta think of some of these places now. And we played at Angel School. They had a big playground there. And first we played playground ball. Then we started playing league ball. First year we gathered together from our neighborhood. We gathered and played B, and we won the championship. They said, you gotta play A-ball next year. Well, we played A-ball, and we went all the way to Lansing to play in the finals for the state championship to an all-black team from Flint. And we lost in extra innings 5-4.
Oh.
But then, see, then after that was, I got more to tell on that too, because we even played the minor league team, baseball team and softball. They challenged us to a softball team because they had a guy who could pitch softball. Mm-hmm. But we tied that game. But, okay. Then that was in 1939.
Okay. At that time, do you remember hearing?
That was 1940.
Okay. At that time, when you were doing sports, do you remember hearing anything in the news about there being a war in Europe or anybody worrying about the war?
War?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're very concerned about the war. Mm-hmm. And there was talk of draft. That's partly in that thing I gave you there. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I were engaged in 1940.
Okay.
And she was finishing up at Calvin College to be a teacher. And so we thought, well, we signed up for the draft, I think in October of 41, we signed up for the draft.
Okay.
And I don't know how you know how the draft works, but they choose numbers, and they choose them in the order that they would be drafted. Mm-hmm. And my number was such, this is in that one sheet there that you have, my number would be so that I would probably go within the first year or two.
Okay.
So we decided to volunteer to go in early, which we could do, to fill the draft quota.
Okay.
So I volunteered with, other ones did too. In fact, I think almost our whole group was those type of people that see, we were going to go in for a year. And we signed up. So I was the second group that left Muskegon.
Did you get to choose the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, or they just put you in the Army?
Well, with the draft was for the Army.
Okay.
See, they didn't draft in the Navy or the Marines at that time. They drafted just for the Army. In fact, our infield of our softball team averaged about 21 years of age.
Okay.
So, and it was a good team, best team in Muskegon. And we, the catcher and the first baseman volunteered to go in the Marines. Mm-hmm. So I went early in the Army.
Okay.
So although that team stayed together, the rest of the players, and they added people to go. So, and from there, we went to, from here we went to Custer and so forth. And from there, we were sent out to the state of Washington.
Okay, so how long were you in Fort Custer? How long were you in Fort Custer?
Only a few days.
Oh, okay, just
I
for
would
processing.
say more than a week at the most. All we had to do, and I think if you go back to that other sheet, it tells me what I did that first two. And I think we went on leave. We left on a Tuesday. We were sworn in on Wednesday. We worked Thursday and Friday. We were off Saturday and Sunday. And then I went to a hitchhike to Grand Rapids, not knowing how I'd get back. And I called my folks, and they took me back to Fort Custer. And so then when I got back in the barracks, they said, you got to get ready to leave the first thing Monday morning. So we were there only about 3-4 days.
Okay.
And we went to, we took a train. We said we were going to the state of Washington. We took a train to Chicago. And at Chicago, there were more others to go out to Washington, out to these forts up at Fort Worden and so forth.
Okay.
Up Puget Sound. And then we had people that joined us from Chicago Detroit area and middle of the state. Usually, say from Muskegon, Grand Rapids to Detroit, that's where almost all the people that came from Michigan
Right.
were going out there. That's where they came from. And the others were from the Chicago area. They were, in fact, we had some of our, we played ball at Fort Worden too. Baseball and softball. But
So-
that's another thing, so I won't go into a lot of detail on that. But then in Fort Worden, we went to, see, I don't know how much you know about the Army.
Go ahead. Lots of people that are watching this won't know that much, and you can
Yeah.
explain everything.
Well, see, regiments are composed of 3 battalions, what they call 1st, 2nd, 3rd Battalion. So what they did, the 14th Coast Artillery was an old unit way back to probably World War I or before.
Okay.
It was a unit that was in this barracks, and these forts were already in place. A lot of these buildings were old buildings way back to World War I, because they were all big 12-inch mortar guns, 12-inch guns, and 12-inch mortars, and I mean in diameter. And 10-inch guns, 6-inch guns, 3-inch guns, and so forth. Okay, that's where all these are. And then we got our basic training there. And this is before radar and all this business came into business. See, they
Okay.
didn't have radar yet. And then what I wound up, finally, they split, it was G battery that was in CC barracks. They, because we were going to Fort Flagler, which was only had probably 3 or 4 people is all they had there, but they built all new buildings there. They all new buildings, and they were waiting till they got done before we moved over there as G battery.
Okay.
And then eventually we were, I was with a group that was pulled from G battery to form what we called L battery. That was only a small battery, which was sort of a subordinate to G battery as far as mess halls, supply rooms, and things like that. So there was just, because our mission was to protect Puget Sound.
Okay.
And with that, to protect Puget Sound, we had 2 large valves in the water with a beam across that valve, like a big thing, maybe 50 feet long.
Okay.
Then they had microphones on the end of each of those valves, maybe a dozen microphones. And we had one on our side of the island, by us, because we were on the east side of the island, right around Puget Sound, because our fort was right up above Puget Sound. And this station that we worked in was about 125 feet above the sound, the surface of the sound. And we had another station across over in Green Bank, which was on Whitby Island, which is a big island on the other side of the sound. And they had a big valve with an arm. And then we had a plotting board, and these fellows learned to be able to track a ship or anything underwater by this arm that come out, because they had to settle this arm, and that give them an azimuth. And they would read that azimuth to a predictor, and then for the predictor we took that azimuth and put it on the plotting board. And that showed us where the 2 things, and we got telephone from across the sound, and where the 2 azimuths crossed, that's where that ship was.
Oh.
And we had 3 searchlights at our disposal that we could use. And we had an exercise for the commanding general on the whole West Coast. There's only 2 stations like this on the whole West Coast. In fact, there's only 2 stations like that in the U.S. I don't think there's any on the East Coast.
Okay.
But on the West Coast, there was 2 of them. One in San Francisco, and the other one in Puget Sound. And the commanding general, I don't know, I think he's 2-star or 3-star general, came one night to see our practice at night with those searchlights. I think they only missed once in 13 tries
That's
of
good.
getting the target, because we had a ship target. They put the lights on, ship was right there. But probably the most, that was what our job was. And we practiced, we had 4 shifts practice. We had 1 shift practice each day, and the other one did something else, work on the island, or we repaired guns, and these big guns, we put fuses in those shells that were in the magazines, and we put fuses in 12-inch mortar shells, we put fuses in 12-inch gun shells, and see, the U.S. was not prepared for this war. They were not prepared.
And they have a lot of stuff left over
Yeah,
from World War
because
One.
we were issued rifles. Some of us was issued Springfield 03s. Some of them were issued a British rifle that was used during World War One and things like that. See? And we didn't even have, some of them didn't even have a full uniform. We had part World War One and part World War Two uniforms even.
Were you trained by any men from World War One?
What?
Were you trained by any veterans from World War One?
Did any veterans from World War I help train you?
Yes. In fact, our first sergeant was in World War One, and we had a cook. I think could have been from World War One. He was Chinese. That's in that sheet too.
Okay.
And we also had one old guy. I don't know how old he was. He must have been 60 or 70. He's a PFC, white-haired, and he tended the furnace. But I think he was from World War One.
Okay.
And a lot of our NCOs were all regular Army people, the sergeants and so forth. They were mostly regular Army people that trained us. And all us, the rest of us, were all civilians. And see, we had our clothes and our uniforms. Talking about uniforms, Washington never got hot, but it never got cold either on Puget Sound. We were issued winter uniforms. We were not issued summer uniforms, because when I played ball, I always put a jacket on between innings because my arm would get cold. But we were right on Puget Sound. And then I think, I don't know if did you put that in that thing about that submarine?
No,
Okay.
that's a good story.
What?
Tell that's a
Okay.
good story.
See, what we practiced, a lot of times, we had a radio communication with the Navy. That radio had a distance of about 75 miles. See, that was to protect this coming into that sound that came like that. That's where it narrowed down. See, you had Vancouver Island out here, and it come down like this. And it's about 5-6 miles across there.
Okay.
And it was deep. And the rolling stones, and we had the tide there that came in and out. And the tide would move those stones. It was so strong. I saw tugboats out there with log bars and so forth. They had a hard job if they were going against the tide, hardly to move forward. They had to work at full speed to keep up with the tide. But the tide dropped a lot there. And we had to work with the tide and so forth. I had that work too, that was that. But, okay, whenever we always had a Navy ship at our disposal if we found anything in the Sound.
Okay.
Like it might be a battleship, because below us was Bremerton Navy Yards where they repaired ships. These big ships, that's where they repaired them. And because that was a busy Sound. A couple passenger boats went through there every day. Freighters came through there. They had to keep it open. See, some places they put in submarine nets and stuff like that to stop. In Japan, that's what they did in Japan and so forth, to catch anybody coming in. Okay, and now we always usually talked, if we had a message of importance, it came in code. Either from us to them or they to us. We had a cylinder that we worked that code on.
Okay.
It was a disc that had to be in a certain order to read the code. It was easy once you got it, know about it. But the Navy always called us or told us if a submarine was going to come into Puget Sound from the Army, from the Navy.
Okay.
And they'd always come in underwater. They never come up above water.
Why?
They come above water when they worked in the Sound,
Okay.
but they would submerge and come up too in the Sound, because they were sort of on trial runs after repairs and stuff like that.
Okay.
Well, we had what we call command post exercises. That's where the three posts worked together. See, Fort Warden was a chief post. That was a big post. That's where the commanding officer of all these. See, the 248th National Guard from Washington State was also located there. They had 3 battalions. And we didn't have any of those on our island, but they were on Fort Casey and Fort Warden. But ours was all 14th Coast Artillery where we were. Well, they were always coming. We always caught them every time we caught them. We never missed them. And then they would practice back and forth, and then we would practice with them too. Well, in October, we got a message that the coded message that a battleship of Great Britain was coming into Puget Sound to be repaired. There's a model of it up there, that little gray ship. That's
Oh,
called
okay.
the Warspite.
Mhm.
The battleship Warspite was coming into Bremerton Navy Yard to be repaired. They had done a big job with it against the Japanese in the Indian Ocean and in through that area.
Okay.
And they were beat up a little bit. They came across to White Islands, Pearl Harbor, and then they sent them and told them that they were going to come into our Puget Sound to be repaired. See, we were not at war. We were not at war. So it wasn't supposed to do that. But we got a message that they were coming.
Okay.
So we were prepared for them when they came, but we never saw them. They were blacked out completely. Came on a black night. We followed them all the way through, but they didn't have a light on it. They were silent. We could hear, if they dropped a wrench, we could hear it. On those things, we could hear it.
So they snuck up on you.
But we followed them all the way in. And then about a week later, we were on what we call command post exercises. And like I say, we had a shift practice every day, and the other one to be working. So that each one, because we had 4 shifts planned for that battery. That's the only thing we did was work there. And we had a listener. We had 2 plotters. I was chief radio operator and assistant plotter on the board. And so we worked together. We were group number 1. And so then we had what we call a command post exercises where they all worked together for communications, all telephones like Fort Casey and Warden. We could call anybody and they send messages back and forth and how we apply. Well, they sent a message that hypothetical, we had one group on duty. And they were practicing. That was on Monday morning. And we were working, cleaning fire trails and something like that. And this message came by telephone that a hypothetical submarine was coming over the north of Ireland.
Okay.
So we said, clarify, please clarify. Hypothetical or real? We've been hearing a real submarine for about 10 minutes. So then the post commander got on the telephone. Well, what you talking about? And we told him. Well, he called the Navy. Navy didn't have anything in there. So boy, things really really popped up then. This was in October. And they had a destroyer that went up and down that sound, throwing wake on both sides of that sound, trying to see where that submarine was. But in the daytime, we couldn't find it. But we had a smooth area at the south end of our island, sand bottom, no boulders. Every night, every day, they would lay down there. This is what we're assuming now, because we went there, you know. But they sat on the bottom there, and every night we'd pick them up. They'd try to follow a ferry boat. We had a ferry boat that went across there. See, they had to come back up to charge their batteries. See, when they're underwater, they use electric power. They don't use the whatever you want to call it, gasoline or whatever it is,
Okay.
for power. Then it come up. We found them Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night. And the Navy, they won't say this happened, or they don't say it didn't happen. But we know it happened because people knew it. I talked to people that came to this area that lived there, and I asked them. They knew all about it. But the submarine, they dropped death charges, and the thing was just called off right like that. Why was that sub there? To get that battleship.
What kind of sub do they think it was?
What?
What kind of sub do you think
They
it
think
was?
it's German sub, because the German sub was operating out there in the Pacific. See, the Japanese, we weren't bothered with the Japanese submarines at that time, very many of them anyway. But they think they was after that ship, is what they were, see, because they can't travel as fast as a ship can. Because a ship can outrun them. But they were waiting for that warspite to hit that warspite. And then when it went out, it came out in black and white. But it was never in the paper. Nothing was ever said about it. But it was a couple weeks after that, or maybe almost a month after that they were there.
Well, now everybody's gonna know.
It was all on coded messages and stuff, see. And then another time we had it that we got a coded message. Well, sometimes someone will be up there, they'll see something in the water, and then I'll call in. Well, the Navy would go investigate it. We talk back and forth by radio then, see. But we always had a guard, what we call a guard ship. And another time we had where we got a coded message where they were going to bring an aircraft carrier and a battleship and some destroyers and whatnot into Puget Sound. And they let us know about it, that they were coming to be on guard and so forth. And they had planes flying above them when they come in, but there was the ships that were damaged in Pearl Harbor that were coming in. And then we were, that was in October, most of that happened around in October. And we were getting ready to go on leave for Christmas.
Okay.
And so, but the 1st of December, all leaves are canceled.
Oh.
No leave. This is December 1. They knew something was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was on duty the night that Pearl Harbor was hit. And we got orders, if we saw anything in the air, shoot it.
So then, were you surprised at all about Pearl Harbor? I mean, you knew something was going to happen.
Well, it was getting, we knew eventually it was something, it was, because they extended our leave, see, in other words, our duty. See, we went in for a year. We even sent some of these older people that were about 39 years old, after their training, we sent some of them home.
Okay.
But when then, the 1st of December, we called them back.
Oh.
They came back to do their job. That was mostly all G battery, wasn't any from our battery. I think ours are all younger fellows. And so then we knew something was going to happen. And when I was on duty, we had 4 shifts. We had a rotating type deal where you didn't always get the midnight shift, but it would play usually in 6-hour increments. See?
Okay.
And then they rotated so in such a way that you would have midnight, the next time you might get the afternoon. And so actually that way, then you got 1 shift off to take care of that. And that, because we manned it 24 hours a day at that time. But we could follow any ship that come in there. And then, of course, after the Pearl Harbor was hit, because we went to bed, when I got off of duty, we ate breakfast and went to bed, because we were up all night. And then when we got up, about noon, they said Pearl Harbor was hit. And we knew then that was it.
You're not going home.
Not going home.
Okay.
But, I mean, even that December 1st, we knew we weren't going home.
Right.
We knew that something was in it. We were trained with a 50 caliber machine gun, and even our outfit was trained with, we had tents. We even built an underground shelter up through clay, went down 15 feet. We made our station we called the hydroacoustic station. It was a little building like that, and a little guardhouse back here, outhouse too, I think, out there. But on Indian Island, that was owned by the government. They had old houses there. So we used lumber we took those houses apart and made that station look like a barn with a little house here for the house, see, to disguise it even. And we built the underground shelter. We hit water 100 feet above the water.
So how long were you in training before you were shipped overseas? How long did you train for?
For what?
In general, how long were you training before you went to Europe?
Before I left there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we just had a regular training, and then we started working in this hydroacoustic station, see?
Mhm.
So it wasn't really a training area, we were actually duty officers,
Okay.
duty. Because that's one thing, that made me make the decision after that, because the fellow I worked with on the planning board, he was from Detroit area. He's a little bit older than I was, he was a Syrian. And his name was Hage. And he was a smart fellow. And he graduated from Wayne State. See, I only graduated from high school, but and we worked on that board, and we had our scores high enough. So you had to have at least 110 to apply for a commission.
Okay.
And I had 132, I think it was, and he had 165. But we decided, why don't we try to be an officer? Become an officer, because it's going to last a while, let's make it. And we also knew that the Navy was going to take over this station.
Mm-hmm.
Just the station, not all of it, but just the station.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the fellows that were there in G Battery stayed there the whole war.
Oh.
So we applied right after Pearl Harbor a while for to go to officer school.
Okay.
So we applied for officer school and got our physicals and so forth. One day I was on the boat that went from our post to the other post for supplies and stuff. One of our proxy submarines popped up right alongside of us. But we were used to that. But Puget Sound became a huge duck farm, a duck pond during the winter times.
Oh.
All the ducks come down there, ducks all over Puget Sound in the winter time. And okay, then we finally I got orders to report for school, for officer training.
Okay. Where did you go?
And that was in May,
Okay.
first part of May. And I was assigned to go to Camp Davis,
Mm-hmm.
located near Wilmington, North Carolina,
Okay.
all the way across the country.
Right.
And I was there the first part of May.
Okay.
And it was a school training for 3 months for anti-aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trained to be anti-aircraft officers. We were very strict, and there was, because they needed junior officers.
Mm-hmm.
See, they didn't have a lot of junior officers, because our army was cut way down before World War II. There was not many people in it.
Right.
But we had people different ages and so forth. Some of them were sergeants that had been in the regular army, and some of these were like I was. Most of them were like I was, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Some college graduates, a lot of them college graduates, I suppose, because you had to have 110 to get in.
Yeah.
And we had, I think, 4 barracks of people for that group, for that class. And about half of them either dropped out or were sent back to their to their original unit again, or some other place, or some of them were delayed a while. Some of them were sent to a later class. They weren't ready to graduate.
Okay.
And then we graduated. I got a picture of it someplace in the hall. It was a big class. It was a big class, because our little bit, we had officers higher ranking officers. We learned, while we had to take tests in math, and we got instructions on different things, review of some of the things we had, but at a higher level than we had when we were more about that. And we went out to they had some guns set up near by the ocean. This is near Holly Ridge is where this camp was, Camp Davis. Not on the map, you won't find it on the map, you'll find Holly Ridge. But Holly Ridge is right outside of Camp Davis. Right now I think it's flat ground. It's on an old swamp is what it was. And I was there May, June, and July.
Okay, not good weather.
We had rifles we had to take care of for the first month we had rifles, but after that we didn't even carry the rifles anymore. I mean, they were in the way actually.
Okay.
But see, we tried to get discipline. And you had a chance to lead your group.
Mm-hmm.
This, calisthenics or marching, and they would try to antagonize you to see if you could get, well, one guy used to ride his bicycle, one officer used to ride a bicycle along a group that was marching.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants you to see, throw your eyes that way, see, because right then he would jump on you, especially this one officer. Or if you saw, he was in class at a big theater one time. He was in charge of that class, the same officer, this one officer did that. Some guys were talking, he made them stand right up the rest of the whole thing what was going on. But it was, when my mother saw me when I got home, she said, "Boy, are you thin." But it was rough training, of course it was in summer months too.
Mm.
And let's see, what else happened on that? Oh yeah, well I talked about going up on the beach, we went to Camp Fisher too for anti-tank training or something like that. And they had the 90mm gun there, and they had a 40mm anti-aircraft gun there.
Okay.
The instructor for the 40mm gun, they had told it, take them apart and so forth, how you fix them and so forth. Well, he took it apart and he couldn't put it together again. It was that new a gun.
Oh.
It was a brand new gun. But then I graduated the 6th of August 1942.
Okay.
I was married in 1941 while I was on pass one time from Fort Worden.
How long did you have off for your marriage? How much time did you have for leave on your marriage?
We come on a 2-week leave.
2 weeks.
By
Okay.
train, we came from Washington to Grand Rapids. She lived in Grand Rapids at that time. And then we went back, but a group of us went on pass. We had our leave accumulate so we could have the days off.
Okay.
Otherwise took home too, but then ours was in August of 41 when I went. See, I had about 6 months. Then I had 2 weeks leave. So I
Okay.
took a train back through Forth. And, okay, we went to officer school, we graduated. I think that was the main thing. It was very strict.
Yeah.
And these little things they would try to get you. You had gigs in barracks, they inspected barracks twice a day. They saw a straw underneath your cot, long straw under bed. So it was a gig. But I got to know some people. I had a fellow that sat right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never met him before.
Mm-hmm.
He was from the same regiment, but he was from Fort Casey.
Oh.
And we became friends. The rest of our lives that way for a long time. And I can come back to that too. But his name was Don McClellan. And also another one was Larry Blaisdell. He came from Oregon. So when we got ready to get our placement where we were going to go as commissioned officers,
Right.
we were brought in the theater and they had on the board where they needed officers.
Uh-huh.
And Camp Hahn had 12 openings. So he said, let's try to go, and we motioned to each other, pick Camp Hahn, pick Hahn. Well, all three of us got Camp Hahn.
Mm-hmm.
And Camp Hahn, where was it?
I don't know.
California.
Okay. More warm weather.
from one up back across the country. But it's right across the road from March Air Force Base.
Okay.
And that was strictly a, Camp Han was built, there's nothing there now. But it was built for the Army to get these units together, form these units, because the unit we were assigned to the same units. We wanted to all get it all in the same unit. So we made went to be sure that we went there to where I got our assignment, that we went together. So we made it, my wife rode with us in McClellan, and my wife and I drove all the way out to California in a car. We bought a car and took it out to California.
From South Carolina?
What?
From Michigan or from South Carolina?
No, from Michigan. I went back to Michigan City and bought a car, and she was out of school then. And before that, she taught in Indiana for a year when I was out, but I was out in Puget Sound at that time.
Okay.
But this time, she went with me out to California in a car. Well, it's, okay, we all went out, and we were assigned to the 440th in the aircraft unit. What kind of unit was it? 400mm guns. And they didn't even have a gun yet. It was a new outfit. The general orders was written the 1st of July of 42. And we had, okay.
I don't know how that happened.
Blaine Dale was assigned to D battery, I was assigned to C battery, and John McClellan was assigned to B battery. And we were all the 4th officer in rank. There were 3 officers there before we came. So we all had the same position in each battery. But we all, and from then on, it was the 440th. Now 440th trained, we got together and formed in Camp Han. We finally got a gun, one gun.
One gun.
And we were sort of tent city, and my wife lived in Riverside and later in Redlands, California. And she had the car most of the time. And she made friends out there. We made friends out in Redlands particularly. And so then we finally got a gun. So one of the sergeants there, he was a materiel sergeant, a buck sergeant. I took him out to the gun. I said, we're gonna take this gun apart. So we took that gun apart and put it back together again. Learned that gun. Now, the 440th was commanded by a lieutenant colonel, and believe it or not, he came from Fort Worden with the Washington National Guard. And I saw his name on bulletins from time to time, camp bulletins. So we had a lot of contacts, and I think Blaisdell went on a train from Oregon to California, because he came about the same time we did. But see, they took cadres out of these units from time to time. They started with cadre, and then they'd take another cadre and start another unit. But we trained on these 40mm guns. Now, the makeup of our battalion, this was a separate battalion. It was the first battalion that was organized as a 40mm gun battalion,
Okay.
called a separate battalion. And because we were the first battalion that used the 40mm gun, which was a Swedish gun, actually. And we eventually you'll have 4 gun batteries and a headquarters battery. Each gun battery had 8 of these 40mm guns.
Okay.
So that was 32 guns in a battalion. And we trained on the California desert. We took these guns out to the, which is now called Camp Irwin, which the Marines are training in right now. It's in the California desert. I don't know where it is. I okay. This here is this Barstow, this is Barstow.
Okay.
See, we were down in here. So we went up here, and then we took this road all the way up here.
Mhm.
That's all desert. I don't think there's a house in there. There wasn't a house there. All the way up there, about 5 miles or so up there. And then from there, it was sort of a few buildings. They had a firing range, rifle firing range, and a few things like that there. And so we fired rifles there for marksmanship. I was in charge of the butts where they targeted and moving the targets and so forth. They picked people for different jobs. But we went out there about 3-4 miles beyond that camp and set up a whole row of guns across the desert that way, 8 guns across the desert. Slept in tents, and big granite tents, about 16 feet in diameter, square. And usually you could get about 6 people in one of those tents. And I don't know if we had 2 tents per battery officers, but anyway, everybody lived in tents. And we were there about quite a while firing at these. A plane would come in the morning with a flag target, and we fired ammunition at that target with a 40mm guns. Well, I should tell you about the 40mm gun. 40mm gun was a new gun. See, the Army before that used a 37mm gun. They used machine guns on the side of it to get on target, and then they'd fire the 37 gun. Lights in the eyes.
Oh. Thanks.
So then they got this new gun, and it was supposed to be a top gun. But I should say, but it operated with a generator and a director. See, that's how the big 90mm gun worked with a director for range and so forth. Well, see, the director was supposed to get on the target, which automatically, with that generator, positioned that gun to fire in that direction. They had somebody behind that director would estimate the range, and they'd get on target, so he would sort of predict where that plane was going to be at, because it's so far a certain distance away. And the gun was supposed to fire, and it fired automatically. We had clips of 4 rounds about this long, rounds were about this long. And they had a clip, and they put that, gunner would put that in the gun, and it'd keep on firing as long as they had that pedal on. Somebody else, he kept on loading that gun like that, and automatically took the shell, of course went out, and then you had the cartridge, which come out and went out in front of the gun, so it's out of your way. It's a good system if it works, but it works sometimes. And anyway, we were out there. Okay, I had another incident that happened in another place with that gun, because we didn't stay there overly long. We took a convoy out after that to move down, and then we went to Camp Young. Camp Young is where Patton's museum is.
Okay.
Patton Museum, but Patton, he put out this desert training center, and he I had it upside down. Camp Young is right here. See, we were here, so eventually we came down and stayed there for a while. And that was the first center. Now this, I have a book here. Tells all about that training center. It was written and tells about all the forts that were out on the California desert. There's oh, 4 or 5 of 6 of them. But see, that's all desert land. I don't know, you know, California, think all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Well, there's no people out here.
Okay.
Because it's all desert, this whole place is desert. Well, you'd go from town to town, you'd hardly see a house for 50 miles without seeing a house. And then a little railroad station or something like that, that's all you have out there. We went back this road many times. I went back and forth this road with convoys and so forth. But one time we had the gun, and the gun would move automatically by the ejector and the generator giving the power to it.
Okay.
But this one gun went round and round and round and round, they couldn't stop it. So there's the same sergeant I told you about the other gun, he and I said, well, we're not supposed to take that gun apart unless we get a dust-proof rope. I said, we can fix that gun. So we took that gun, took the oil motor apart, because there's one motor on the side that operated the azimuth, the other one operated the elevation. But a grain of sand got in one of the valves. We drained the oil out of it, took the sand out, put it back together, and put the oil back in, and it worked perfectly.
Oh, that's good.
But we did that. That's how I was known as the mechanic, gun mechanic of the battalion. And okay, we were there. We were at Camp Young. We were at Camp Iron Mountain, which is up north. Camp Iron Mountain is up over here. The 4th Armored Division, I don't know if you have heard of the 4th Armored Division, that's where they were camped. They were one of the big divisions that worked at Bastogne. And they were camped here, training in here, so we worked with the 4th Armored Division at Iron Mountain. And then we went on maneuvers there. The sand is such in that desert. We went to a camp outside of it. See, we were a separate battalion. In other words, we didn't have any higher headquarters. We were always attached to somebody.
Okay.
Or we were on a mission by ourselves. And it was sort of a special battalion, especially since we were a new type battalion, being the first one with a 40mm gun. And we moved in this one place at Iron Mountain. We had to winch some of the trucks in there because the sand was so deep. I went back there during a maneuver. You could race around that place on hard ground. All that ground got so it's hard. Some places you go in that desert and the dust is that deep. You take these Jeeps and twist those wheels and just throw that dust out like snow. And then from there, we moved up north of Needles on the road between Needles and Las Vegas, town of searchlights up there. I talked to somebody that was up there the other day. That was Elizabeth and Sean. Not Elizabeth, but Leanna and Sean were here. One of my granddaughters stopped Sunday. And they were going out to Bullhead, which is on the border of Arizona and California. So I said, oh, I know that area. And so we went out there, and then we were with the 9th Armored Division there. Now the 4th Division wanted them to assign our unit to them as their anti-aircraft, but they were not allowed our type of unit. See, we were a truck-drawn unit. And after our unit was formed, they came up with a special type unit for armored, which used half-tracks.
Okay.
They use half-tracks for the 40mm gun, and they also use half-tracks for multiple machine guns. And we had just a 40mm and a 50 caliber machine gun. So we couldn't be signed to it. And I think that helped us to stay in the desert a while longer. We probably would have gone into Africa otherwise. We might have gone into Africa. But, okay, then we went to what we called Camp Ibis. And we have a plaque. We put a plaque out there. When we went on one of our reunions, we had a plaque put out there that we were there. And we were assigned to this armor division, but we maneuvered a big maneuver over this whole area because all these camps from here all the way here, because this is all open for armor training. Because no civilians,
No one lives there.
no civilians at all. And you go for miles, miles and miles. Because I know one night I went, we moved, we used to go once in a while, especially when we was up at Camp Mar, we call it Camp Mar, and we used to go hunting rabbits at night, with a jeep, with lights and so forth. And, we went there, we went on another big maneuver there. Anyway, I was out here for a year.
Okay.
A year, almost to the day. I think we went across the border in the end of August, we went back to Michigan, this last of August too,
Okay.
because we were moving to Camp Pickett, Virginia.
Okay.
And it's such that I had a car there, so I could travel by car instead of with a unit. They went by train. See, there we used a lot of going by train. But anyway, we went to Camp Pickett, Virginia. We was there for a while, and then we went down to Camp Stewart for final training.
Okay.
And there that's in Georgia, near Savannah, not too far from Savannah, Georgia. And we trained there for a while. And there we fired out in the field where we could fire all the way around. We would shoot at these radio controlled planes and stuff. So they try to dodge it. They don't want to get hit, but it was good training, see. And we did about 5 weeks, 20 weeks training in about 5 weeks. Really intensive training, non-mean training. I think I was sleeping about 4 hours a night. Because we go shipside, mock shipsides and stuff like that. And from there, we went up to Camp Shanks, New York, to get ready to go overseas. And in fact, we spent Christmas at Camp Shanks. We spent New Year's on the ocean, go across to England. We didn't know where we were going.
You didn't know which country?
What?
Didn't even know which country or anything?
We didn't know where we was going, to Africa or England.
Why do you think they didn't tell you?
Well, security.
Okay.
Security. Because we went in convoy.
Mhm. How many ships did you travel with? How many other ships?
I don't know, almost more than you could count on.
Okay.
But we were on the main ship.
Mhm.
Our battalion was on that ship. We had a detachment of airborne people on that ship. I think there was a general with them. And there was a whole hospital unit that was on that ship also. Doctors, nurses, and all that. It's called the Dominion Monarch, was the name of the ship.
Okay.
It was a British ship. We had 2 meals a day. The dining room was for officers only. That's how many officers were on ship. We had battleship Texas on this side. We had 2 or 3 escort aircraft carriers on this side, loaded with planes. The whole deck was loaded with planes to go to Liverpool. We went to Liverpool is where we ended up. And I think that convoy only stopped once when they thought they had a threat.
A
But
German
it was
sub?
it was a big convoy. This was right in the middle of winter. And then we went to Liverpool, then we went down to the south part of England. And we were in British barracks there. And then we moved up to near.
Can I pause a second? I need to change the tape. They only
Okay.
last an hour. Let's see here.
You want,
Go ahead.
okay,
Okay? Well, we went by train, and of course their trains are very much different than ours.
Okay.
They're smaller, Where we have four-wheel trucks, they have two-wheel trucks.
Were they a lot older?
The older, yeah,
Yeah.
because see, England was very, I don't know what, very concerned. Because every beach had barbed wire on it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it, at least not on all of it, but mainly on the east side and the south side. They had, every beach was barbed wire and everything else. And of course, they couldn't stop an invasion very easily. Because they were concerned, because I think through God and so forth, the way he was in control of this, it's a wonder that England wasn't invaded. Anyway, we went to Liverpool, we took a train to Bournemouth, which was on the south coast of England. Then we went up to Reading, and while at Reading, we could send an officer to Biddeford, which was on the west coast of England, on a little inlet, to learn how to waterproof our guns and trucks. So I had a jeep driver and a sergeant and a truck and a gun. We took it to an ordnance place for a week to show us how to waterproof a gun. And I don't know if any other battalions did or not, but I was the only one there, and my sergeant and my driver I stayed in the British home. The driver stayed in the British home, the sergeant stayed in the British home, I think.
What was that like?
We was there a week. See, they take the gun, what things should be covered in such a way, because see, we're going off in water, salt water. And they, see the 40mm gun, I can show you what a picture of a 40mm gun is like. It's a four-wheel gun. It's easy to put down and easy to put up. And in the truck, of course, 2.5-ton truck has to be set to go through water. Okay. So we were there for a week. And I come home for that, back to the unit. And then later, the whole battalion went to Willicombe, which is on the west coast of England, which is on the other side of that inlet that I was before. But that was a training ground for the whole 1st Army assault training for all types of units. They used this area. The officers filled the resort hotel. That's how many officers were there. And officers, all the dining room was all officers. And there were officers from all branches of the Army, all combat, particularly combat units, I would say, combat units. Of course, our unit was considered a combat unit. Our primary mission was to shoot low-flying airplanes. Secondary was infantry. And so we went there as advanced officers. My two buddies and I and another officer from A Battery came down there. We all sort of lay as an officer or reconnaissance officer to go ahead.
Okay.
We went in there early, and then the battalion came down there, and they had some people that went to all these other ones. But the sergeant knew a lot about it. So anyway, we went there, and we were there a week. Went through the training and so forth. We on landing craft, and we actually loaded the landing craft and took it out and landed on another beach. And then we went back as a battalion, and I don't know how long we were back there. I was the executive officer of the battery at that time, the second in command by that time. There was 3-4 commanding officers, and they went in canneries or got hurt or something like that. One of them broke his leg, and they shifted around officers to make the good unit in each battery that was all compatible so they could work together. Because it was very important, because each one had to know his job. You can't cover up for somebody else very well. And then we got a call. Blaisdell and I were asked to come down to be instructors at that training center. So then we were training other battalions. We each took a battery. My sergeant, same sergeant I had, he went with me, my driver and so forth. And we stayed in a house on the beach overlooking the water. We could see Lundy Island out here.
Okay.
And so we took, each unit came in, we took care of them. We had a mock-up of a landing craft. We showed them how to load a landing craft, how to unload a landing craft. We had them practice that. And after they practiced it long enough, because when you loaded that landing craft, it has to be loaded a certain way. Well, it's a landing craft. I have a model of, you know, way up there. Way up there about, you can take it down there. This is a kind of landing craft. And there's three types of landing craft. This is, I think, was a 5. The 6 had a little bit different, and the 4 was a British landing craft. And but they're all very similar. And we had to told them how to land these landing craft, like these 40-meter guns. We'd put a gun, a truck, a gun, a truck, a truck, a truck, and a gun, truck, gun, truck, here. Be 4 guns, be a platoon, see, which is commanded by 2 officers, you see. And this truck here, we had them, a truck with a winch on it, so they could, sometimes they had to do it through sand, so they could throw the winch on that truck, or on the gun, to pull the gun back into the,
Good.
okay. They had to pull the trucks back, to pull the guns back, see, because they had to be steered back in there. And it was so tight, you couldn't walk between any of the trucks. You couldn't walk between them. You couldn't walk around it by any means. And of course, it has to be level, because you don't want it lopsided or anything like that. So we trained them and then took them out, and each one of us be in charge of a landing craft. We had 4 landing craft come in and load up 1 platoon from each of them, and took them for a ride on the landing craft and then a beach. Now I talked about the tide in Washington. Well, the tide in England's even bigger than the one in Washington. And I know this one inlet they had there, it's quite a ways across, but when the tide was out, you could almost throw a ball across it. It was so long, it was just way out like that. You can see one little boat going down out here. But when the tide came in, it came in. We had a good beach to land on, but I know one night we had really problems with it because the water was coming in too fast. And one caught their chain of the ramp and so forth, and I got Blaisdell got his off, and I got mine off, but the other 2 couldn't get theirs off. They had to go on to some kind of dock to do it. But anyway, we was there. This thing was strictly to train troops for landing. They even had, you know what a duck is? Army duck. That's a truck that can go in water.
Okay.
And that was new during First World War II. And you don't see much of it anymore, but they fixed so they could go in water. And they had us put a ship out here, about a mile out here, and they had these ducks go out to that ship, load up with ammunition, and bring that ammunition in 24 hours a day, regardless of the water. And sometimes those ducks will go just like that, and then down, especially after they go into the water. And the infantry trained there, artillery trained there, and then they finally had to close it up. They closed it up. We still had a few more batteries to go, so we went down to Peyton, England, which was on the south coast. We were up, no, this is wrong. I got another map. See, here's where it was. I think that's Biddeford down there. And here's where we were, and then later we went up here.
Okay.
So I had to go way down to here, and this is where Willicum was. That was Resort Center,
Okay.
a big hotel there.
Now, at that time, Dad, were there any, German flights or anything over that area
No.
at that time?
No, we were
No.
safe there. No, they came over, London was the main thing. And see, I used to go into Oxford quite often when I was up here. When I went into and there was quite a few landing strips through there. They say there's so many American troops on the British Isles that they would sink the island.
Oh, no, he's going that way. Yeah, stay put.
Oh,
Moving off campus.
okay. I didn't realize that. No, but see, there were so many troops, American troops. You would hardly see any British trucks or cars. The buses rode around with a little trailer, which is a charcoal burner, and that's what they use for power. And see, they were really hit hard. I didn't get into London, although a lot of people got into London. But anyway, then we got ready. We knew that the invasions was going to come soon. And when I got back to the unit again, we went down to there and we had a few more units, and that beach had barbed wire on it. This other beach over here on the west side, they didn't have there. And I won't go into some of the side things. But we had a couple units we had there. We were on special duty there. We slept in a hotel and ate in a hotel or one of the Army units that was there. Because Army units were all over, all over. And one thing about England, we had no signs. You strictly had to go by your map. No, not so many miles here or so many miles there.
No road signs.
No road signs at all.
Strange.
See, they were always afraid, see, as they got there, they followed the road signs. Because I wanted to go to a certain town, Houghton, and they thought I said Taunton. But, I mean, I asked the Britisher, what road, and I thought I said the other thing, so we got detracted that one time when we went out there. But it's just a truck or two, so it didn't make too much difference. We got our way back on the road in front of our maps, we could tell with the maps. We had good maps, we had good maps to work with, 1 to 25,000 there. I had all kinds of maps, I had all the maps of southern England, and I had all kinds of maps of Europe. And anyway, we were there, and then we came back, and then this was in May or June, first part of June, May, mostly May.
Okay.
And then I was sent to a unit to be reconnaissance for my battery, being an executive officer. And then they've called me back because the plans had changed. I don't know if you heard about it anyway, but some of these people that worked in this assault training center,
Yeah.
they took some LSTs out. You know, like the one downtown here, that big LST.
The
That big
ships.
landing ship down in Muskegon Lake. 4 of those were out south of England.
Uh-huh.
South of England. They were short landing craft as it was because of the invasion down in Italy. They were short landing craft. They had 40 landing crafts that went out, and some German torpedo boats knocked them out.
Oh.
Knocked all 4 of them out. And so they had less landing craft. So that meant I was going in a day later than I was going in before because they had to get, they didn't have enough landing craft. Because they needed it more for infantry and so forth than for us to hit the beaches. And then when I signed to then I went back to a different unit. I went to a 90 millimeter anti-aircraft unit for that. That was going in before ours was. Because I was going in one day before my unit would go in. And the Blaisdell and McLeod did the same thing for their units. But we were all separate. And we went into that thing. We went into a holding area right around about the 1st of June or a little bit after the 1st of June. We went to a holding area where we could not get out. It was run by the British. We used British cooks and so forth, slept in tents. And I think we were only there a day or so, and they said, they hit the beaches. That was the 6th of June, when we woke up the morning of the 6th of June. We're gonna go towards embarking center with that unit.
Okay.
So we went, and I was all by myself with this unit. It was a platoon. And we went towards, I think, Southampton. And stood bumper to bumper to bumper. All these trucks lined up, waiting to get on the landing craft. And this was in June, it was sort of warm out. But see, we had air superiority. See, what they did, see, they knocked out a lot of aircraft plants and a lot of this other stuff. And it was, see, Russia wanted us to attack sooner. But we wanted to knock it out to get air superiority, because we did not have air superiority before.
Okay.
And otherwise, we never could have made those landings. But, so then, that was the 6th of June, so the 7th of June is when we went, because then we were briefed exactly where we were going to go. We didn't know when we went into that holding area where we were going to go. We didn't know what beach we're going to be on or what's going to be like. And we were told exactly what the beaches would look like. And we were supposed to go to Utah Beach. Okay, so we were lined up. And then I got to the landing ramp to go to this landing craft, to load that landing craft. They had one officer with that group that I was with. He didn't have one idea how to load that landing craft.
That's not good.
But I had to load it for him. So I loaded it for him, because I made sure that thing wasn't going to tip over.
Right.
Not what you want.
And anyway, we went out, finally we loaded by that night of the 7th. Well, then I loaded the landing craft, it was dark. It was almost midnight, I guess, time we got it in. I took a couple of seasick pills, laid in front of the guy that operated the landing craft. They had maybe 1 or 2 people, Navy people operate the landing craft, that's all they had. I woke up, here he was, headed for the beach, when I woke up.
Oh.
And I told him, that's not the right beach, I'm not supposed to be here. He said, I don't care, you're gonna get off, because I'm going back to England. So I got off, but my unit's gonna land on Utah Beach. And I was on Omaha Beach. And that was the 8th of June. And my unit was supposed to be there the next day. So anyway, we went to, there was a higher headquarters, an aircraft headquarters, so went to that. He said there's a landing craft on the beach that is going to take some of these other people that are on the wrong beach to the other beach. And I think it was that famed landing craft that sits on there.
Okay.
Because it was the only one there, and I knew it was on Normandy. They told me it was on Normandy, because I went and told them to check the log. I went there one time, they checked the log, and they were on Omaha Beach. So anyway, we got it, when that landing, it was there sitting, we waited to load it, we walked all the way around that landing craft, because the tide was out.
Oh.
They took 12 foot of water in the back end of it. So we walked all the way around it, when the tide came in, we floated away to the other beach. And I saw my company sign. I said, I got to ride on a truck that was going over there. Put my stuff, gear I had. I slept on the ground that night. And you had to be careful where you slept, so somebody doesn't run you over or something. But I saw my sign, and that's where I wanted to get off. But our mission there was to protect the road up to the supply depot.
Okay.
Leading up, because we only had one main road on Utah Beach. But we got on top of the cliff there, because the Germans were about a mile in by that time, I think. And Utah was not too far in, but we landed on the beach. We landed there, but we landed on a pier there. They had a pier there by that time, because they put a reef out of ships and so forth to cut the water flow down, and they had barrage balloons up there for planes and stuff. I got to my unit, and at Saint Marie de Mont, no, Saint Marie de Mont was where we were. But we slipped on the ground. About 100 feet from us was a glider that had crashed, that they used for the glider landing. And that was getting stripped. And it crashed down because the gliders went in to Omaha area. And we had just had made a little dent in there. And we had one or two planes that came over. One plane came over trying to hit the road. But they rattled the road. See, the road goes like this. And he would, see, they would go across the way like that. They don't go straight across like this or down like this. They may miss the road, see. So they went across like that. And I had one gunner, and went and inspected to where all the bombs dropped. That was one of my jobs to do for the outfit, because in our area. See, each airplane, each one of those batteries of that battalion operated almost like a separate unit.
Okay.
In other words, this battery was given this job, this battery was given that job, and just that group would be together. And those guns, even on that, in those, of the battery, they'd be 800 yards apart. So each gun crew was almost like a unit by itself. And then they had little headquarters for the platoon, who took care of each 4 guns. But that gunner was right in the line of that bombs. And he had 2 bomb drops, one on each side of him. And he was fired at 50 caliber machine gun, and he didn't even know they were dropped.
Oh.
But you could have dropped a Jeep in either one of those holes. But he's a little Mexican kid from Beaumont, Texas. I still get a Christmas card from him. He's a nice little kid. And, okay. From there on, I didn't sleep inside of anything more than a tent until September. We were in the hedgerows. We gradually went across the peninsula, and then they started going up to wipe them out this way. And another job we had to protect the first airstrip for fighter planes in there. And then Germans would fire at our guns once in a while. What we did to get a field of fire, we might take down a tree or something that might be in our way. Wrap a cord around the tree and blow it, and the doctor cut the tree down. But one gun section had to move because they didn't chop too many trees down. They got too many shells coming in. But we finally got across there. But we were in the hedgerows, and also about, let's see, just the guns came in early. So we had a later, rest of the people came in when they got Sherburne cleaned up. So we didn't have all of our stuff with us at that time. And by that time, we had junked our directors, but we kept some of our generators. The directors were too slow. They couldn't follow a plane. By the time they got to the gun, the planes were gone. They had to use another system. They used a British system. But that was probably a lot of waste of money, but because those things cost, I don't know what they cost, because they're special made, you know, and everything else. They said they were about $5,000 a piece for the directors. But see, we had 8 of them per battery. And there's 4 batteries, so you know, all the directors, they just stored them. But we kept 3 generators, I think, for each battery, kept 3 generators for each of the battery headquarters and the platoon headquarters. But we waited there, it took a while, and then we moved, we got ready to move, because I don't know if you've heard of this, what they call the bombing of St. Lo. That's the city down there, we always referred it to bombing of St. Lo. It was a important town at the at the end of the peninsula.
Okay.
And they, Bradley wanted bombers to get the Germans out of that area because they had us bottled up in that peninsula. So he got the Air Force, and they took every plane they had, I think. And we watched these planes, blue sky day. These planes came over, squadron after squadron after squadron after squadron of these bombers. Dropping bombs in that area, they just stripped that whole area, wiped out almost everything. All the trees were scattered with all the shells. They didn't bomb anything special, but certain areas. And they came in droves, and they had fighter planes, P-38s and so forth, flying above them to protect them. And they left this beautiful trails behind them because of the beautiful day and we relieved one of these self-propelled track type anti-aircraft units, and one bomb dropped right in one of their half tracks. And the commanding officer of the battery was killed in that, and we would just relieved him. And we were ready to move just as soon as they cleared it out. Then we moved to St. Lo, and then we protected another airstrip. And still intense, we got up, and we went up through France. It took time, you know. We had convoys and so forth. I know I had one convoy I was leading. We started up at midnight, and we had some half tracks at that time. They give us a half track with 50 caliber machine guns in them. There's 4 machine guns you could fire at one time, at one object, and you don't want to be in the way. We call them meat choppers, and we had a couple of those, one or two per battery, I forgot which. And we moved up, and then we were along the Seine River. And that was the first place we ended up building it. We were in a chateau right near the river.
Okay.
We vacated it, and we put our whole battery there. We protect the bridge over the Seine River at Milan. We could see the Eiffel Tower from there.
Oh wow.
And about that time, gasoline was short. And Patton was working on that, and then he wanted gasoline, and because he was going one way and we were going another way, because we were First Army troops. We were First Army troops. And we motorized, they took our trucks in the 79th Division, Infantry Division, and some other divisions, took the road up north towards Liège just as fast as they could go. They would not stop unless the Germans stopped them.
Okay.
They threw the Germans were on the run. Germans were on the run then. And some of the people got left behind, and just about that time but it was the longest move ever made in history in a single day.
Oh. How far did you go?
What? Oh, they went 50, 60 miles or more.
Wow.
They didn't stop for anything unless they stopped them. If somebody stopped them, they went after them. Because see, they didn't have the transportation that we had. They couldn't move as fast as we could move. Because, and then we went, and there's the town of Charleroi. We went through Paris and so forth when we got up there. But we got into Belgium, and we were given a mission to go to protect a bridge along the Meuse River so the 9th Infantry Division could go across it. And I went on reconnaissance through the town of Charleroi to see how to get through the town, because it's a big town, see. And here, each battery had 25 trucks.
Okay.
And see, when the whole battalion was on the road, we got about 125 trucks when the battalion was on the road. And each battery is moving by itself because they're given separate missions. And we were protecting this bridge, and I went to find a way through Charleroi, how I could get through. So we went through Charleroi. They welcomed us. They had all things. It's just like you saw some of these things. Well, see, they were just liberated a day or two. And the Germans were in the woods and stuff. They say, well, there's some Germans in this woods. I got off on the wrong track coming back. I got, and the guys told me there's some Germans over in those woods. I said, well, I gotta get back. I can't hunt them down. And so anyway, we turned the battery up there. We went on. It came up to the Meuse River and turned right alongside the river, went alongside the river, and there's a cliff right behind us. And I was in the second vehicle, I think, the Jeep ahead of me, and I was in the half track. We got out in the open, the Germans opened up on us across the river. A little town over there. And we lost some men there. I directed fire for, I had the half track, of course that gun was in there. But they hadn't cleaned it out yet before, the 9th Infantry hadn't cleaned it out yet. And we had a gunner. I directed his fire. I said, well, I found out there's a machine gun down there right alongside the river. I said, you see that smoke down there? He put that machine gun and took that machine gun right out of commission. And there's a church over there with a steeple. And they were firing from the top of that steeple. I said, fire there. And I swear I saw that steeple, that tower move, but we shot that one off. And I know how much ammunition we had fired by that time. I loaded his guns there by laying on my stomach and picking up to his chest, and ordinarily I can't even pick it up, but I picked it up extra strength for some way or other. I loaded his guns for him. That's four guns I had to load. A 50 caliber machine gun hit you in the hand, it would knock you down. That's how powerful it is. And there was 4 of them in this woods well. And those cases are big, heavy cases, metal cases that they're in. And so I said, I can't load it. I told another kid to do it. He refused to do it. First, so I did it. And then I said, let's pull back around this corner. And I'll clean those cases out of there, give us room. And somewhere or other, we went around that corner. And I told him to put the guns facing the river. And either he couldn't or something. Anyway, I got on the half track. And to help him load his gun. He was trying to get out of the thing. Because he's got a shield in front of him like this, see? Like this, comes around him like this. That protects him, see? And whether he could not get his gun around, anyway, I think a sniper shot, and I stood up, I think he shot at me. But that shot was just inside of that turret. It went in, bounced around, come like that, and it come right back and hit him right here. And he was trying to get out of that because he was hit. He died the next day. And so sometimes I wonder why I should have, but I think he was aimed at me because he had that guy's back, whole back toward him. And I was right in front of him, over to one side. And he was a nice kid. He just made T5, and he's a good gunner. Everybody liked him. But we've lost 3 or 4 people, at least 4 or 5 people there. And some of them injured, they had to go back to England. But anyway, we pulled back, finally we pulled back into the woods. And I looked for another place. We just pulled into the woods back a ways, just to get out of there, because some of our trucks are still there. And some of our KPs and stuff like that, non-combatant people, got separated from the, either got out there some way. Anyway, when the trucks went back, they weren't there, so they walked on the road back to find us. Anyway, they picked up a German officer, or they picked him up and brought him in, the POW. He had walked all the way from Paris. And then so we went back. I went to see where we could go, move, but some of the officers went back to get our trucks and stuff. So the people, that was a little town over there. So those people motioned them for us to come over there because the Germans had left and the other ones wanted to surrender. So we picked up 12 prisoners there.
Okay.
I don't know how many were injured that they didn't bring back, but they were gone. But then we came back and protected a bridge there, Namur in Jambi. And then we went on up into Belgium and different places. We protected ammunition dumps, we did all different things. And also some of the places we did, we protected the corps artillery, some was self-propelled artillery. I know one place that was sort of hilly and so forth, near the British, near the German border. And we were up in the woods, and this self-propelled battery was behind us. Only thing is, the Germans, when they counter battery, they find out where those fires coming from, so they try to get back at them. The only thing is, those shells would hit the trees, and all come down on us. And our tent that the CO and I stayed in, that day, one day, we decided to dig in and cover it with logs, so where we slept, we could go underneath those logs.
Mm-hmm.
We salvaged that tent the next day, so it had so many holes in it. But God's protective care, I don't know. We had people that had shells that tore up their pillows that they slept on. And so many people. And we had another place too, where one of the fellows that was hit went to England. He was coming back to our unit, one of our sergeants. They come back, 4 of them in a jeep, and the Germans saw the jeep, so they fired on them.
Mm-hmm.
One piece went right through the middle of the jeep without hitting anybody.
Wow.
We still got the picture of the jeep that had a hole in it. He said, "I think they know I'm coming back." But then we got into skipping some stuff and whatnot, because some of them were. See, I was the executive officer all the time, all the time over combat. See, I was with these fellows all the way from August 1942 until October of 1945.
It's a long time.
I knew almost the roster by memory, alphabetical order. And I was the officer that was with that battery the longest of anybody. And then we went to near Aachen. We were around Aachen. Then we went into the Hurtgen Forest. And that was something else, Hurtgen Forest. The first sergeant was a lumberjack from Oregon. And so we put up a tent. That was about sometime in November. It was muddy. We had snow already. And the Hurtgen Forest were all nice straight trees. We put up a big tent. We put logs around us. They said, "You're going to be here for a while."
Mm-hmm.
But it was we took a lot of casualties. I mean, when I say we, I'm talking about the military as a whole.
Okay.
They had a rough time in the Hurtgen Forest. And, but anyway, we thought we could stay there for a while. We was there about a week.
Mm-hmm.
They told us to move back to Belgium. We moved back to Belgium. Okay, we went into sort of, if you want to call it a rest area or something. It was only a day or two. We went up into Belgium towards the front line. We went into the town of, ended up in the town of Huntsville.
Okay.
And our mission was to shoot the V1. I don't know if you know what the V1 was. It was a robot aircraft with an engine and a shell and big explosive. The idea was to bomb England with these robot planes. And the launching area was just over into Germany, right opposite where we were. Because that's where we got that mission, to go there, to shoot those things. It sounds like an old wash machine, the motor did. You could hear it coming. You could hear it coming. And when we were first there, that was about the first part of December. They send them off for a few days, and we'd shoot at them. And then they didn't send them. If they sent them, they sent them above the clouds where we couldn't see them. And I don't know what see, I wasn't with the guns. We had a battery headquarters one place in the middle of what we're protecting or someplace, because that, so be ready with the unit. And we were there, we were there about 2 weeks. We had to go through dirt roads and almost had to, even with the trucks, it was hard. It was in woods. And we had to put the guns up the line. And we weren't, our whole battalion was strung out in a straight line. And that front was held by the 106th Division and the 99th Division. And we were about right between the two divisions. Some of us were, I think most of us were in the 106th Division area. And the 109th Division. These are brand new divisions, just recently arrived from the US. This is the first time they were in the line. And the 99th is over here. They had some OPs out here and so forth. And we were shooting these V1s. And then one day, one came over, we were someplace, I don't know if it was back of the truck or someplace where we were standing up. We heard one of these V1s come. We ducked our heads. It went about a mile or so beyond us. They knew where we were.
Yeah.
Because I know one gun section, they could see Germans in the distance. And then the 16th of December came. That was the start of the Battle of Bulge. They knew where every one of our guns were. Because we fired tracer ammunition. Because we guided our gunfires or targets by that tracer ammunition, see. When I mean they give a flame or a little bit of light behind it, see, so you can fire. If you see those ships and so forth on TV, they always see that light follow. That's the kind of ammunition we shot.
Okay.
And the 40 millimeter usually fire 3,500 yards, they can fire that far, and then they would explode. That's why it usually gets stoked by a plane. They were self-destroying. And we got a bombardment that one morning. It lasted at least a half hour or more. One section had 12 of them landed in the field that they were located in. But none of them exploded. They all went into mud. Dropped into mud. And some pieces of shrapnel was this big. I had a piece of shrapnel about this big, about that thick. I gave it to a guy who bought some stuff from, I sold him some stuff and whatnot, I don't have it anymore. And here we are sitting, we didn't get orders to move. We were waiting to move, because we knew something was happening. And there's only one way out of there, and that was north. Because we couldn't go back to another road. And But we didn't move out of there until it was almost dark, that we got march orders. And then we got ready to move. We moved up to Huntsville. And this book is almost all about it. I don't know if you watched the Weather Channel that had the Battle of the Bulge on the Weather Channel.
I've heard of the author. I've read books by him,
Yeah,
but I haven't
See,
seen
this
what,
is,
what you're talking about.
the longest winter.
Mm-hmm.
See here, I think I could show you where. See, this is a story of a real story of fellows from the 99th Division that set out in a little crossroads where they had mines. And this Piefer, who was going to be the head of the whole invasion, had to go through that minefield. And this platoon, squad I should say, not platoon but squad, kept them from taking those mines out. They got, I don't know how many Germans they killed. I think they were not very good military people, because they tried to attack them from the front, this squad from the front. And all these fellows, some of them got back to their unit. See, they didn't move because their division didn't what move them, wouldn't let them move. Then they lost communications. Some of them were killed, and the other ones, everyone was taken prisoner that was left. And there was never an after-action report filed on that, because there's nobody there to give it. See, when you have combat, you give it off an after-action report.
Okay.
And it wasn't until they got freed from their POWs, and that's what the story is about. And here's where they were here, and we were right here.
Pretty close.
And this Piefer was supposed to take this town by 4:30 the first day. We didn't clear that town until after midnight. But they held them up enough because we had no other way to get out. We had to come up, I got the whole after action report of that whole thing, of the whole Battle of the Bulge for our battalion. And and a lot of people don't have those things. It tells all about this whole thing. And in our battalion, I had the battalion report of the after action report of that. But but he finally got through. He got through that night. And there's another book. I sold a lot of my books, or they did. Called, oh, here, this one, I think it was this one. We were each other's prisoners. And one of those prisoners was in the town of Huntsville. And they went to sleep in the night in a barn. When they woke up, Germans were all around them. They were taken prisoner. But we finally got out of there. I got hit in the back with a piece of shrapnel. They threw an 88, I think it was 88, into our guard post in front of battalion, but because we were waiting to get our orders, and we finally got orders that we had to go and help the 106th Division.
Okay.
And we finally got it, but after I got hit, I went inside, I told them, how bad is it? Is it bad enough to patch it or put a patch on it or something? Because I had heavy clothing on. And I got the piece yet, I think I got hit, it was only about a piece like that.
Oh.
But it killed a fella and wounded I don't know how many others. But I woke up halfway under a Jeep after it hit, and then I went in, and then I said, I'm gonna move my people out of here. So I moved it down the road a ways and took a Jeep and sent the driver out to intercept the column, and they got a hold of me. They got a hold of somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning, so we moved out of our little place and moved down a ways.
Okay.
Then the officers insisted I go to a hospital, because there was a medical hospital near there, to have them look at it. And so they, so I got a reward for that.
Mhm.
But then we went down, and then we went into, back through, we went through Normandy, down to Normandy to St. Vith. And the Germans decided to take that dirt road. And they split our column. I think B battery took the brunt of it, but they come down and they turned the one tank this way, and B battery was coming down this way. And the Germans wanted to go south, so they took off cross field. They did put a gun up and fired something. I guess they exchanged something. I don't know if they lost anybody or not. But McClellan, that was McClellan's outfit. And I got their after action report too. Then we went down to St. Vith, and then they moved back into, see, those guns that we had against tanks were like pea shooters. We had to get them in the sprockets or behind or something like that. And the 70th, 7th Armored Division was coming into St. Vith, and then we was going out, and we could, and the 106, what was left of them, were coming out. I don't know where they were going, but they were pretty well, they got shot up awful bad. 99th got shot up, and then we went back to the Moor, and we had C and D battery together, and B battery was out by itself, and headquarters and A battery, they engaged the enemy. They helped stop it, and the colonel got a Silver Star for causing the mass. They started to set fire to a ration dump, and he had them put out the fire, and he got a Silver Star for it. And they stopped the Germans, because then they, see, they didn't have air superiority. We had air superiority to a certain extent, and it's fortunate we did. And of course, it was cloudy to weather, so they couldn't do too much. But we got in there, and the COs went up to headquarters and found out, and they said, we're going to attach you to the 75th Armored Infantry Division, what was newly revived from the States. This was Christmas Day,
Oh.
or day before Christmas, Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, I guess, or day before Christmas Eve. And so we made contact with the 75th Division, just newly arrived from the States. I slept in the snow that night, and we had a headquarters, and then we got up, then the 75th got the mission of the northern side of the Bulge, come down with artillery and stuff. And then the Germans would fire, and we were on it was a hill, we were just behind the hill. We could see these shells, hot shells come over, could come through the air, red hot. Those artillery shells would come over and so forth. And it was pretty touch and go for a while. And then we finally closed up, and then we went back into Belgium. And then the 75th Division, we had, I don't know what the mission we had there. Oh, we had attack, support the artillery, division artillery, with anti-aircraft support. Each battery took care of a field artillery battalion, because they have 3 battalions of 105s, and they have 1 battalion of 155s. D battery got the one to protect, that was general support, the other ones were regimental support. And we were the 75th Division from then on. And then we went down into, we went back to Belgium, the snow was about this deep and so forth. Put guns out and so forth. Then we were given a mission to close up the Colmar pocket, which was the last pocket that the Germans had. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not. That's about 30 miles from the Swiss border.
Okay.
The town of Colmar is the last stronghold that the Germans had. And the 75th Division was put in the center. We came down from the north. Because, see, the Bulge was up here, and so we went all the way down to there. I don't know, we went through a night in convoy. The whole division went by convoy down there. And, of course, the only things on the road were American vehicles. There was no French vehicles or anything. And the French army was down there, so they attached us to the French army, First French Army. And the 75th was given the center of that, and the 3rd Division was given one side. They had fought all the way through Africa and all the way through, and then the 28th Division was on the other side of us. And they were one divisions in the landings in Normandy.
Okay.
So they had two top divisions on each side, and the 75th went down the center. Then we cleaned that pocket up. But we had shrapnel there too. One fella had knocked a pin out of his hand with a piece of shrapnel. There's a lot of other stories too in between. But then we went up, and believe it or not, our next mission was with the 2nd British Army, which was in the Netherlands. So we went all the way across, from way down the Swiss border, way up to the Netherlands. And we were in Maastricht and Wormen, some of those places. And with the 75th Division, we had, we put our guns in. What we did, they came up with the idea of putting certain colored banners over trucks,
Okay.
different colored trucks. One banner means certain time, because we don't know where all the Germans were and stuff, because it was a fluid front, very fluid front. One of our officers was standing at a gun pit, and shell came in. He got a piece of shrapnel right through the neck. So we lost an officer there. And, but then we went into Mutterklaublock. Then we went into, finally ended up on the Rhine River. Near across the river from Duisburg, I think. And our mission there was, we had some guns setting on the river. They were building a bridge, pontoon bridge, up at Wesel, which is up to the turn of the Rhine River, up north where it goes up into Netherlands. They put a pontoon bridge. We had when we were there, we had one plane at night, German plane come in at night. And he came down right near where we were. I could see the pilot in the plane, I saw it close. And we had a gun there, but he couldn't even get on it fast enough to even fire on them because they're so low. You don't know where they're coming, they're gone before you even get to the gun or get the gun on them. And we also had our guns along the Rhine River because they thought maybe the Germans might try to put something in the river, torpedo boat or something in the river to try to knock that bridge out. And the Germans were on the other side of the river. We had to keep under cover, our people had to keep under cover. And then we went, finally we went across, I went across that Wesel Bridge a couple of times, because we went into Germany finally, and Duisburg and whatnot, and some of those factories. I got 5 typewriters out of one of them. I got a slide rule that
You still have?
my grandson's trying to sell over the internet. It's a slide rule that's that long. And it's a German slide rule. Because they were all vacated, see, all those factories were vacated. And we went down, and then we went down north, and then we finally ended up in Siegen. And that's when the war ended about then. And we got, our mission then was to take care of a displaced person, holding area for displaced persons that came from all these different foreign countries. And the CO of my battery was sent back to the States for some reason. So I became battery commander of the battery. So I was responsible for that whole camp. There was 32,000 people there.
That's big.
And 24,000 of them were Russians, or Ukrainians or something like that. The others were Polish, Italians. I don't know if we had Austrians or not. Well, quite a few Polish, from some Belgium and France, even some from England that had been put to work over there. But while I was there, it's in a camp that was a training camp. The Germans used it as a training camp. And I had my whole battery set up in the officers' headquarters. Not the camp headquarters, but the officers' headquarters, which is set up way up high, and we looked down on this whole little town of Siegen, which was about 60 miles like this way from Frankfurt. And it was British territory. See, the British took over that territory. So I don't recall how long we were there, but we had to feed them, we had to bring in water, we had to take care of sanitation. I had 5 French blacks attached to me for a while to do delousing, 2 lieutenants and 3 sergeants, I think. And I had my exec officer sort of go between the camp, because I was responsible for my people. I had 160 some people. And I think eventually, 2 or 3 of my fellows married somebody from that camp.
Huh.
No.
Interesting.
And I think most of them are gone now. One was Cleveland, one in Chicago, another one in Texas, I think. And then from then, we were there for a while.
We have to pause again.
Okay,
Go ahead.
see, we had it quite a while. I had Bromberg, who was my exec officer. He was a platoon leader before. He's about 4 years older than I was. But he he later graduated from the University of America University in Mexico. And he became a national forest ranger
Okay.
to these different forest parks. He used up Isle Royale and Puerto Rico, and also he lived in New Mexico, is where he lived in Albuquerque. He died sitting in the chair. And he went back to Europe.
Oh.
And he got sand from both beaches. So when he died, he had his daughter send those 2 vials to me.
Oh, that's
I
nice.
got them downstairs. Of the sand from the 2 beaches. But here's this thing, it was in, this was in one of the battles. See, the Battle of Bulge has a association,
Okay.
people that were in the Battle of Bulge. And that's where all the units that were involved in the Battle of the Bulge. And this is about that Piefer, of all the people he killed in Huntsville, it's on here, and he killed 17 people in Huntsville. And all that they know of. So okay. So we were there quite a while, but we brought in water. I had a truck with I don't know how many big tanks. We rounded up some. I rounded up some big tanks, 1,000-gallon tanks, 500-gallon tanks. This was a nice place that we quartered our people in. All the enlisted men were in a big ballroom and double bunks. One up and one down bunks in that ballroom. And we had rooms in there. We had a big kitchen in there on the 2nd floor. There's a big flying thing about this big. And Germans had a lot of good stuff. They had a lot of good stuff. And we had to bring water there. Some of the windows were broken and so forth. But the office I had, I could look down on Siegen. That's where we ran into more civilians when we were there. And they had a playing field. We started getting our ball team together for the after the war there. And sometimes they played a soccer game there, the natives did. My headquarters was way down below someplace. But we had just as good quarters as they had, if not better. But had marble window sills on 3 sides. We kept track of how, we shipped out 8,000 people while we were there, sent back home. Some of them didn't want to go back.
Oh.
But they had higher headquarters that would send in trucks to take the people to where they were supposed to go. We didn't have, our job was to see that they were taken care of. They stayed in one place. They didn't go try to rummage around the area and things like that. And of course there were women in there too, men and women. And but Bromberg could speak somebody's language is good. He was a good man. He was a right-hand man down there. And he could meet these people and, with these Russians and so forth. They usually had somebody that represented the group where they had it. And we would get visitors there. The 75th Division commander, two-star general, came down one day to look over the camp. And so the colonel finally sent me one of his officers, a major, to take care of these people when they came through, because we were doing a good job. We built a latrine that was 50 stalls long, because sanitation was a big item. There were brick buildings, 3-4 stories high. That's where most of the Russians were. And then we had another camp back a ways, which was sort of a training camp for, I think they had horses and so forth back in there. And they were, that's where some of the Italians and others, I was in both camps, I don't know how many times. But that's how our people met some of those people. And that's why they ended up marrying them. And they were intelligent, a lot of them were intelligent people. And anyway, eventually, I was only a first lieutenant yet. They couldn't promote me because they froze all promotions. I got my promotion in December of 45 to a captain, because I was eligible for it. And what was I going to say? Okay, yeah. See, that was British territory. See, they divided into British and American and Russian territory. And this was British territory where this was. See, the Americans were in Frankfurt. I've been in Frankfurt headquarters. That's where the headquarters of all the American troops were in Frankfurt. So I went to Frankfurt, I don't know how many number of times, especially with some of these kids that want to get married, because we had to get it proved down there. But anyway, the British finally came in, and they had a major in command to take it over. And then we left there, and we went from there to Bonn, Germany. And that was still British territory. They had a pontoon bridge at Bonn. They rebuilt the bridge at Cologne. I went through Cologne, I don't know how many times. So we went into Bonn, and Bonn became the headquarters for West Germany. And I had my troops in houses. We had 3-4 houses in a row, because most of the German people were gone. See, they left and evacuated. And we had a place, this was the main street, this was the main street, this street just ran between those two streets with houses on both sides. And the houses were just like this. They're all fastened. In other words, you want to get your backyard from your front sidewalk, you gotta go through the house.
Okay.
And they had a little yard in the back and hardly any yard in the front. They're all close together. Streetcars finally, after we got in Bonn a while, they ran a few streetcars. They had boarded up windows and so forth, and some of the people started to come back. And but the British was in charge there, so we got permission anyway from them. But my mission there was to protect the supply line from Bonn, Germany, down to Bingham, which is the turn of the Rhine River, way down south. Put guards on it and so forth, because it was Russian territory, British territory, French territory, into American territory. Then I had some people down in Bingham. So I went along that road from Bonn to Bingham, and Wiesbaden was right across the river from Bingham. And I had an officer and some people down there. But we went back, but I went right by that Remagen Bridge that was captured. Picture of it there. Of the Remagen Bridge, and that's why we were sitting down getting that Wesel Bridge done when they got across there, so they got across there first. But then we were out in Bonn, and that's where I finished up with the battalion, with the battery, and I finished came home in October. The unit came back, the unit itself came back November, so I came back as an individual. But another incident was God's provision or what, I don't know. But I went down into Namur, where they had a replacement center, where they were taking people, gathering people to go back home. And so we went down there, unloaded, went there. I didn't have my bedroll in my stuff. They sent it off on the wrong place. And it was taken up to another camp where they loaded ship. How was I going to get my bedroll back? And I couldn't speak French. This is up near Antwerp, where that was. But I remember one of the fellows I worked with in that salt training center, he was stationed in Namur. So I called him. I got a jeep and a driver to take me over there to Antwerp to pick up my bedroll. I brought it back. I got it. And then we went to Antwerp and shipped out of Antwerp.
Okay.
Took us 12 days to come in convoy over to England. Took us 10 days going back on a victory ship. And then we came back on a victory ship and it landed through Camp Shanks where we went out of. Came right down the Hudson River. I went out from the Hudson River to go to England. Now I come back from there up the Hudson River. And they took us all the way up and they put us on the barges. And then we got steak dinners and whatnot. And then went to Indiantown Gap in Pennsylvania to be released. Then we had our choice to get out or join the reserve. But by that time I had almost 5 years in the Army. And we were afraid we had to go to war with Russia.
Right.
We were afraid we had to go to war with Russia. And I was only 26 years old. And I thought, well, I got my commission, the other ones thought some of it too. And most of the officers, that whole battalion, that was a nice battalion. I mean, the people got along. It was not a rowdy, that whole battalion was made up of civilians. That whole battalion, right from the top to the bottom. Because the commanding officer was a National Guard officer. And some of them were ROTC officers. We had 3 of them from the University of San Francisco. And we had some people in there that were very wealthy. We said one father owned half of San Francisco, and the other father owned the other half. One had a mammoth. They raised peaches. They had 10% of the world's peaches. The Tagus Ranch, it was written in the book up. Tagus Ranch was written up in the book Grapes of Wrath. It was mentioned the Tagus Ranch and the Grapes of Wrath. And the other one was a big contractor on the whole West Coast, from Alaska on down. And I think one of them said he owned a mountain over there. But this one kid was a real athlete, Bob Frick. I still hear from him once in a while. It was beautiful to see him run. But let's see, then I came home and I went into accounting.
Into accounting.
I studied accounting by correspondence. And I got my diploma and I worked for an accounting office and took care of 30-some accounts for small businesses. See, prior to the war, small businesses didn't even file income tax returns.
Okay.
The individuals didn't file income taxes. Do you know that only half the people pay income tax in this country?
No.
I just read that in the Wall Street Journal today. Only half the people actually pay income tax. But hardly anybody paid it that except the really rich people.
Yeah.
But then I did that for 12 years. Then I bought my dad's store. It was a 16-square foot store.
Where's that at?
That was in Muskegon,
Muskegon.
on Terrace Street.
The clock jewelry, the watch jewelry store, right?
What?
Fixing watches and jewelry, that store?
He had it for a while, but I got rid of it eventually. The watchmaker
Okay.
retired, and I had it strictly as a Christian bookstore. Then
You
we moved
still
out,
own
now
that?
we're in the mall area.
Okay.
We got a big store there, and her husband runs it, and she runs it. And, but I love accounting. Yeah, see, I didn't have to take it in high school, and even accidentally even getting into accounting. I played on the ball team in 1939,
Uh-huh.
and the fella kept the books for that drugstore that was our ball team.
Mhm.
So he approached me one day. He said, "Are you interested in studying accounting?" Because he sold courses for LaSalle Extension University out of Chicago. And I said, "Well, I'll think about it." So I went, told my dad about it, and I took it, and I studied it. We did not have adding machines. I did it in my head. Even in the accounting office, everything had to be written by hand.
Mhm.
We had to use carbon paper for copies. And of course, eventually you bought a Frieden calculator that weighed that. You could hardly carry it, cost $1,000. Now you can put it in a pocket and do a lot more.
Yeah.
But then I took the store over, that has grown. But I stayed in the reserve. And they had a lot of people. I had a sheet here that told where all these people were assigned in this area, all the different officers were assigned. And I don't know how many of them, I knew probably a dozen of them. I knew them, that they all stayed in reserve. But I stayed in reserve. See, if they stayed in reserve so long and they didn't do anything, they were dropped out. They were dropped out. But I went to, somebody called me one day and asked me if they would tell them about my experiences. So I went there. But they had another guy that was ahead of me for the Navy.
Uh-huh.
And he was so long-winded, I never had a chance to do it.
Uh-huh.
And I think maybe it's a good thing because there's so much, I was in so many different things, engaged in so many different things, but they had an officer there that was charged of the reserve, some of these reserve units. This was 1948, December of 48. So the fellow came and asked me if I was interested in becoming active in reserve. So I said, okay, I'll think about it. So I did, I joined it. And so I was with that ordnance. It was an ordnance outfit, which is a service type. See, the other units are combat units. These are service type units. So I joined it as a bomb disposal of unexploded ammunition.
Okay.
So I knew learned a lot about ammunition and stuff. And then they phased them out. So then I went to school. They had a school for officers in Grand Rapids. So I went over there, to the Army over there for a year. I went to that summer camp for 3 years with that bomb disposal. I went to Indiana, Chicago, and Savannah, Illinois with those units. And then they came up with put a battalion headquarters in Muskegon. So I joined that as exec officer. I was a major by then. I was promoted to a major in '54, I think it was. I became a major. So commanding officer was a lieutenant colonel of ordnance. He was a contractor. He built GTE telephone company downtown. He was a supervisor to build that building. And he left town, and then another one that was a friend of mine, the first friend of mine with the bomb squads was with this fellow. And he was the aide to the commanding general of the 10th Armored Division. So he wrote a book about the 10th Armored Division. So he talked to me about publishing it. So when he got it published, he brought me a copy.
Oh, that's really cool.
Named Dean Chapman. I think he still lives there. And his son was in her high school class.
I think it was a
Chapman.
year ahead of me, I think.
And they were one of the 3 top students in Motor Shores High School in that year that she graduated. She was number 1 in that high school class.
That's really
and
cool.
the other two were boys. One of them was Chapman's son.
Mhm.
But then we joined that battalion, and I was with that battalion for 13 years.
It's a long time.
And then they took that battalion out. See, that's the guide on for it.
Okay.
This is a picture of my headquarters. I think this was taken at Camp McCoy, I think. I went to Camp McCoy most of the time. But I was, I can tell you about something about one fellow there too. But we built an armory here. They built an armory downtown.
Mhm.
And I had 4 civilian aides that helped me run the battalion. Because I had a unit in Charlevoix, I had a unit in Traverse City, I had a unit in Grand Rapids, and I had one in Holland. And I had 2 little detachments in Hastings that I had to visit from time to time. And I had commanded a unit for 6 years, and that's a plaque for it, that's me there. That was taken in Utah, I think. One summer we went to Utah, and that was a army depot where they reconditioned tanks, and they had an ammunition dump there, and it's all civilians. The whole camp was civilians, and they took a tank and they put it right down to the basic hull and rebuilt the whole thing. And put them into Quonset huts. You couldn't walk between those tanks. They have all just crowded in there. But then I ended up, they took the battalion and, see, they have plans, Pentagon makes plans, and they have certain units and so forth. But we had a very good record as a battalion. We were probably rated as the best reserve unit in this area, or this state. I had one colonel come down from Lansing, or Battle Creek, I forgot where he's stationed. Name was Lansing, who was sort of my supervisor. He was a regular Army, active Army, I should say. Well, McClellan stayed in the Army. In Blaisdell, the other fellow I was with, he joined the Oregon National Guard. He retired as the Adjutant General for the state of Oregon as a Brigadier General. And his wife called me when he died, and he died. He was about 4 years older than I was. And he came to a number of our reunions. We talked about old times. But McClellan, he went back in the Army, and he came and visited me. And when I was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, he was a major then in active duty, so he came down and put my Lieutenant Colonel leaves on. And then he went to camp one time, and then the officer in charge of all Indiana and Michigan, General Seaman, he was a 2-star general then, and he later became division commander for the 1st Division that went to Vietnam. And he got a 3rd star, and he was I Corps commander for all troops in Vietnam. And he was on the Bob Hope show when they had that. And later he became West Coast commander of all the East Coast. East Coast he was commander, he's 3-star general. Name was Seaman. He was a cigarette smoker, chain cigarette. One cigarette right after another. And I rode in a staff car, and he called me one day to try to get hold of the president of Continental Motors, but I couldn't get to him, get to his secretary, but he would take no calls. He wanted to invite him to some kind of firing at Camp Grayling. But, and also, I was invited to Armed Forces Day Friday when Governor Romney was governor of Michigan, to come to Lansing for him to signing the Armed Forces Day for Michigan. And he invited me, this officer that I was responsible for it, he wanted me to meet the Adjutant General because they were planning to merge the reserve and the National Guard into one unit under the National Guard. And he invited me, he said, if we join, you'll be a commander for an engineer battalion. But it never happened, so.
No.
But I had a good rapport. Because I was later promoted to a full colonel back in 1969. I went to Command General Staff School. My experiences there too. Because see, I took it by correspondence. And because I had the unit here, visit units, I had a store to run. And see, Eisenhower had a hard job getting into Command General Staff School. I don't know if you knew that or not. He had a hard job because the fellow that was in charge of the infantry for the Army didn't like Eisenhower. And he was an infantry officer, so he was responsible. But he had a mentor. I read 3 books on Eisenhower, written by different people. I read a lot of books.
Maybe we should see if she has any questions, Dan.
What?
Maybe we should see if she has any questions.
Yeah, I was going to give this. But Eisenhower couldn't get it. But he had his mentor that he worked with down in Panama. He said, you're going to get something, a order changing you to the Adjutant General Corps, and you'll be eligible for Command General Staff School. So that's how he got in. And then he was #1 in his class. But see, there's a lot of that friction in the Army.
Yeah.
And, but I went to there too, and even there, I had to, that's the class I was with. Over 20 of those are lieutenant colonels on that picture. 1 colonel and some few majors and 1 or 2 captains. But I was there for 2 weeks, and that was quite an experience in there. That was like a country club post, because that's where everybody in the Army goes for Command and General Staff training. And it's a 4-story building, air-conditioned, big theater. We had an officer from France to tell us about Vietnam, because this was in '67 that I went there. And he told us about the French experience in Vietnam and so forth, what it was like. And we had to, they broke us up into, our group into 4 people, and we had to brief a new commanding general. And I had the part for the supply. And I had the longest speech to give. And the officer, when he got through, the only criticism I have, you don't look at the general often enough.
Oh.
See, somebody represented the general, see, and it was like a class, see, and I give it like it was a class instead of talking to that general. And then also, when we had a command exercise, the last thing we did was we had a battle. We had 2 divisions fighting each other, and then we had a control division. And I was in the control division as the S3, which is the Operations and Plans Officer. And I was assistant. And the school put it on, and the regular S3, or G3, whatever you want to call it, was in the school, part of the school. And I had approved the general orders of these 2 divisions. And I turned them down twice because they were the property. I had a sergeant that could do it. And they had a colonel that couldn't do it. But I took that course by correspondence. So I got more training on that. I was fortunate to get all that training. It helped me in my business. Because I was just a dumb kid.
So do you still work in your business now?
What?
Do you still work in your business, or not very often, and pretty much
I don't get there
retired?
very often. I still do work for it, yeah. I still do some of the, I do all the reports, like income taxes.
Okay.
I make a monthly statement out, 13 pages long.
He does some of the accounting.
Right.
And I'm also treasurer of the condo here. I have been since '88. I've lived here since '83. I was on the board before that. I was on the board already in '86, I think.
Okay.
We just had a meeting last Tuesday. And I'm going to be relieved of my job finally, because I have my house for sale. I got a lady down the street that will take over for me.
That's nice.
But they said he's replacing somebody else, so she said, we still want you on the board, so I'm probably gonna still do that
Okay.
and help her get started on it. because I'm gonna eventually try to sell this. I have a nice condo here. You ought to see the condo. It's a nice condo. But any questions, other questions? I have all kinds of stuff.
Well, would you say overall then it sounds like overall you had a very positive experience while you were in the Army.
Was the Army a positive experience for you?
I think I was very thankful for it. I would recommend that every male physically
Spend some time
able
in the service.
to go into military.
So you think
I talked to a young fellow one day.
uh-huh.
They have a little ball field over here. Where some of these young kids play. And talk about that. We had a battalion softball team overseas.
Mhm.
So I played ball in Germany, I played ball in France, I played ball in Belgium. I was the only officer that played on the team. I played third base for them. And most of my battery was on that ball team. And I had to go, see my headquarters when I was in Bonn, Germany. Going back, I didn't tell you this. I was in Bonn, Germany. My headquarters was in Liège, Belgium. So when I went to headquarters, I had to go up to Cologne, go through Jülich, through Aachen, all the way into Liège. About 90 miles. But see that unit, they all operated separately. You get in the military, you get to delegate authority, plan things, and have somebody else execute them.
Mhm.
Because I had, at one time, I had a battalion. Well, I'll tell you, one time, we had the best summer camp I had was in Camp Holland. We sent people ahead to, 2-3 months ahead to find out what facilities, we tell them what we want. And my headquarters did that, so we got certain barracks and so forth planned to us. We got a nice headquarters building for headquarters. I had a battery from, or a company from Minnesota, and a company from Wisconsin, and a company from Indiana. And we were the headquarters for those 3 companies. And we had inspectors. The head inspector, or evaluator I should say, evaluator, was a member of the 1st Division out of Fort Riley. That was stationed, that's before they went overseas to Vietnam. And that General Seaman was division commander. I didn't know it at that time, that he was there. Because that was later that he went there, because he was still hitting Battle Creek before that. And then we had 2 fellows that came in and evaluated us every day to see how we was doing and so forth. And so one day they came to me and said, we're going to have the chief evaluator come down to see you. I said, okay. So he came. And he went through. Because we were getting such high grades. See, they were checked upon, whether we were favoring us or something. When he got through, he said, you deserve those grades, if not higher. So I thought that was good. But I had some good officers. 5 of them were engineers. One of them planned that big clover leaf out there. He worked for the highway department. And he was became my S3. And that, he was good. He was a good military officer. He went back into the Army. And he retired as a major, I think. And, but I got reports on my desk, which each one of my sections did during that day. I'd get it the next morning, I could tell what they did the day before. And now I've lost all those engineers a year or so later. 3 of them worked for Brunswick Corporation. One worked for, I had one of them that worked for Hooker and Montague. Another one worked for DuPont. And I still get correspondence or or Christmas cards from one of my officers that worked for DuPont. He turned down a transfer for DuPont, and he said, I gotta take this next transfer, and he went back to Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia. I still got a Christmas card from him.
Uh-huh.
He retired as a lieutenant colonel. Now, here, this fella here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He was my operations civil servant. He stayed in the civil service. His name was Grolo. He worked for me. I talked to him almost every day when I was here. When our unit disbanded, he took a job down in Indiana. As the same way. And then he took a job in Wisconsin. I forgot the name of the town. But he joined a unit in Milwaukee. And they invited me to his retirement party as a colonel. And I had him as a sergeant,
Uh-huh.
but I trained him. And he had to be in formal uniform. That was the division headquarters. I got one from him and one from the unit. I got 2 copies of it. I could have gone, but it appeared with something. But see, I got to the point when I was colonel, they couldn't find a place to put me. Because you can't just, I have to show you my uniform.
So interesting.
So it's quite a history when you go from a guy that's going to go in the Army for 1 year. I ended up with 34 years and 4 months and 6 days.
I actually don't really have any questions. You were very detailed.
Yes.
Like one of the longest
He
interviews
is.
I've had. I have to